Oh boy, isn't this just the second episode of the Fun Killer Chronicle?
This is how we warm up.
This one's rough, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, I might not be remembering the books that well, as I have found out as I've been rereading them, but I think this might be one of the tougher sections.
It feels that way. Like you come away feeling that way for sure. You're like, wow, that was a whole long lot of trauma. But what I saw, like reading back through this, is that it's really not. There are two pretty traumatic scenes and described long stretch of deprivation, but almost all of the scenes, if you count them up, are scenes of kindness and redemption.
Yeah, but there's also a whole lot of a 12-year-old getting horrendously beaten.
And homeless. It's not great to be homeless for 3 years, child or not.
And, you know, we're starting at the beginning of this with him losing everything and everyone he has ever known.
Well, that's already happened. That's in the past. That's past Kvothe.
Yeah, we don't have to think about that for like 10, 15 chapters.
That is episode 1 Kvothe. Episode 2 Kvothe
Is the next day.
Is the next day, and he lives in the woods.
Completely different Kvothe. Brand new facet of Kvothe.
So this is the Fun Killer Chronicles, episode 2.
The Fun Killer Chronicle.
The Fun Killer Chronicle.
Yes,
by
we're
Patrick
absolutely
Rothfuss.
going to omit that S when we build the website and what have you.
We'll just put the S there with a strike through going through it.
This is episode 2 of the Fun Killer Chronicle.
Nice.
I am Beth.
I'm Rex.
And I'm D-Day.
Our theme music is by the awesome and amazing Lizard McGee from the band Earwig. You can hear more of Lizard and Earwig at Bandcamp, either earwig.bandcamp.com or lizardmcgee.bandcamp.com. Check it out.
And we're here today to talk to you about Kvothe in the woods, Kvothe on the road,
Kvothe in an alley and on a roof.
Kvothe out of doors. A lot of outdoors Kvothe.
Yeah.
Living hard.
Living rough.
Chapter 17 through...
Chapter 18 through 36.
18 through 36. I'm sure we
Chapters.
would have announced that in a way that you would understand if you're already listening to this.
Well, I did one extra. Yeah, we're not doing 37. Let's bold that for next time.
So in this episode, we're going to be exploring chapters 18 through 36 of The Name of the Wind and picking it apart because fun things should be dissected.
I'm not sure this qualifies as fun. I did find it enjoyable, but, you know, child abuse and poverty in general are not things that I like reading about.
Yeah, it gets real Dickens-ish, and I definitely...
there actually is a word for that.
Yeah,
Is it?
it's Dickensiesque.
That is not the word.
In German, it's Dickensein.
Dickensie.
You guys are wrong.
Dickish.
So it gets a little dickage in here where we need to see the torture of a child for a long time.
Patty Rotz is going to get real dickish on Mr. Kvothe here.
Master Kvothe. He's still quite young.
Young Master Kvothe? Mm-hmm. Young Master Kvothe.
Hey, D-Day, tell us about the fucking plot.
All right. So we start this movement of the story with chapter 18, Roads to Safe Places. I'm sure this chapter is going to both feature a road and a safe place, either on or after the road. Don't you guys think?
It seems like that's what the title is describing, right?
You'd hope so. Things have been rough for Kvothe. Kvothe is coping with the pain of everything and everyone he knows being completely obliterated. He tells us about the 4 doors of the mind: sleep, forgetting, madness, and death. And Kvothe's mind decides to sleep while he wanders the woods. There is a dream sequence. Kvothe downloads forestry knowledge from a woodsman in a forestry learning montage.
Whoa, I know rangering.
Then the woodsman is Ben, and Ben teaches Kvothe knots that he never learned from Ben.
Whoa, I know knots.
And then they're talking about waystones, and there is a shadowy henge, and Kvothe wakes remembering some forestry and starts taking care of himself. He finds a place to bivouac against a top...
I'm sorry, Gesundheit?
Yeah, I don't know what bivouac is. Is that a military term?
It's when you make a rudimentary, like, shelter for yourself. It's making bullshit camp.
I see.
He bivouacs against a toppled waystone and uses it as his windbreak. And he wakes and he finds a rabbit in his snare. And then he can't kill it because it reminds him of his slaughtered family and his pet bunny. So he voms and lets it go. Then he's like, "You're starving, dummy." So he sets a snare that will kill instead of just hobble the animal so he doesn't have to take care of it personally. And he goes to make a shelter for his loot.
Yeah, that's right. This dude, not a vegan.
No, you can't be a vegan in the woods.
So untrue.
I've seen no proof of it. And
you can
I get
boil
all of
Douglas.
the vegan magazines.
If everything goes right, our theme song is created by a vegan in the woods.
Yeah, but like he has walls or a yurt or something, I bet. Chapter 19, Fingers and Strings. Kvothe eats rabbits and fungus and does my side of the mountain shit. He survives in the woods and plays the lute and comes back to himself bit by bit, kind of. He starts playing beyond song structure to play something akin to the names of the environment around him. Warm grass and cool breeze and wind turning a leaf.
We basically have a musical enlightenment sequence.
Yeah.
Like, this is sort of, I think it's really clever the way Patty Rothfuss lets us
Beth.
know that this is a development of profound musical skill.
Mm-hmm.
He plays every song he knows and then he plays songs he makes up, and then he plays things that aren't songs that are indescribable as music, but, evoke sunlight on your skin or Ben in the Wagon or whatever those things are. And then a string breaks and he learns to play them with one less string, and then a string breaks and he learns to play it with one less string. And I think it's this really sharp, small, and very profound little bit of writing that is showing like why Kvothe is the musician that he is.
It's his first heroic feat.
It is his first, and it's done. It's not a goal he set.
Yeah, it's undesirous of outcome. It's just pure behavior for its own sake.
Yeah,
and
to distract himself from his loss.
Mm-hmm. It's like his first act of naming is him just being, devastated and open and wandering the world and bereft of other comforts, even the structure of song.
You should remember that for the end, because that's a really good point.
You edit audio.
I know, I'm just saying remember to bring it up at the end, because I'll forget.
Yeah, you remember to hit mark right now. So he breaks all his strings, and then he has so few strings left, he has to rejoin civilization so he can get some strings. And it's turning to winter, and Kvothe is in a pretty pitiable state, trudging mile after mile by foot, and most ignore him, which is fine by Kvothe until he meets a farmer and his kid, and they eventually get Kvothe to get onto their cart because he's going where they're going. They ask Kvothe to play his lute because they see he has a lute, but he can't bring himself to play his lute. So they sing for him instead, which is beautiful and very sweet and incredibly sad.
I was really hoping you were going to say lute one more time.
Chapter 20, Bloody Hands into Stinging Fists, wherein D-Day will once again say lute. The wagon reaches the city of Tarbine. They arrive to market or a square in town or some shit. And the farmer and his kid realize Kvothe is like really in serious trouble. And
you mean a scared, destitute child?
Yes.
Yeah.
And maybe slightly feral?
Not yet.
Not as feral as he's gonna get.
It'll get worse. He's still pretty filthy.
He just spent a summer in the forest. He's pretty feral.
And the autumn.
There was a pool. It doesn't say he doesn't bathe or anything.
Didn't say he made lye soap out of ashes and pee.
Sounds pretty gross.
So the farmer and his kid offer Kvothe a place to stay at their farm and to take him on as a farmhand and take care of him. And Kvothe runs away. He can't deal with it. So he runs off and he gets lost and he ends up in some truly rancid slums, which is when a gang of older boys attack Kvothe. Kvothe, full of moxie, fights back. But the leader of the older boys, Pike, throws Kvothe onto his parents' loot and it shatters underneath him, which is when Kvothe goes feral and bites him. And Pike gets to beat him mercilessly until Kvothe passes out.
And this is also the last time we'll get to hear D-Day say loot for at least a few chapters.
Yeah, a whole bunch of chapters. Not until the end of this, actually.
Arl's loot.
Arl's
That's
loot.
the last we'll hear from Arl's loot.
So Kvothe comes to while a constable is tossing him of the last of his money, which isn't even that much. He still has his book. He still has his...
Oh, great shout out to early policing tactics.
Oh, yeah. Cops suck.
Yeah, but back in sort of medieval-ish times...
They still need a good defunding.
Right, like that cops were basically either privately employed or what they did was get some money from you for saving you from the circumstances that you're in. So
Same thing for fire departments as well.
oh man, creepy ass fire departments. But yeah, I like that little bit as like firmly grounding him. Like even the authority that is there to help him is only there to help him for what they can take from him.
Mm-hmm. He retains his book and knife and some other stuff, including the clod of bread the farmer gave him. The farmer! Kvothe rushes back to the square where he left them, but it's too late and they've already gone back to wherever they've come from. He's got nothing to do but eat the bread, drink some brackish, gross-ass water out of a horse trough, and eventually finds a seemingly safe alley to sleep in, after being actually literally kicked out of the doorway of a bookstore. Welcome to Tarbean. Chapter 21. Basement, bread, and bucket. Kvothe has been homeless in Tarbean for a month now. He's spanging, but not doing that well, mostly getting kicked instead of being given any change. The day before, Kvothe tried stealing from a butcher and was given a concussion for his efforts.
Is that concussion 2?
No, that's concussion 3, my friends. I am tracking them as we go.
Kvothe sees some urchins being given rinds of bread and investigates cautiously. And then he finds what seems to be an Oliver Twist Fagin sort of situation.
Not Fagin.
It seems to be Fagin, but no, it's Trappist. This story's Fagin. But he seems to be genuinely kind and caring, and surprisingly is not exploiting anyone in return for his kindness and taking care of sick and indigent children.
Now, come on.
Wouldn't that make him not a Fagin? Like, isn't that the literal opposite of a Fagin?
Fagin exploits them, but he still takes care of them.
And let's not
He's no Bill
overlook
Sykes, Beth.
It's Bill Sykes.
He's the guy with the song that's like, Bill Sykes, got a fucking dog, kill my girlfriend. He's the bad guy. Fagin's like the half bad guy.
Oh, in
Oliver.
Twist. And
in
Oliver
dickishness.
Twist.
In dickishness.
What is it? Dickensian?
Dickensian.
There it is. There it
Dickish.
is. Found it. All right, let's go on.
And come on, let's not let Trappist off the hook completely. It's not like he's filling that water barrel.
Yeah,
He is
Kvothe is
exploiting
carrying
these children.
buckets. Yeah,
that-
so that they have water so they don't die.
That's right.
If there's one thing you should learn in preschool, it's how to carry a bucket. Yeah, those sand tables are not as innocent as they seem. Chapter 22, A Time for Demons.
Sorry, go on.
Guess what Kvothe does? Kvothe learns how to be a better homeless boy. He goes to the temple of Telu, which gives charity to the homeless, but only if you pray with the talons first, which is coercive and gross and not really charity if you think about it.
I don't know. He doesn't seem bothered by it.
It's still coercive and gross to make somebody pray for your god in exchange for food.
Hail Telu, full of nails, your hammer to my forehead strike.
Kvothe makes himself a little hideaway on the roof of a tannery where 3 roofs meet. That's where he hides Ben's book, which is the absolute last physical thing that he has to remind him of his old life. We find out a little bit more about Tarbean. It's big, and it's the same tale of 2 cities. A tale of 2 cities always is. Waterside, poor. Hillside, rich. Kvothe goes to Hillside for the Midwinter Solstice Halloween Easter Festival, which is like Fat Tuesday with Victorian vibes and demon masks.
And with a little Krampus laugh going on. You got to have Krampus running through the street.
So many Krampuses.
Wait, can we pause for a second?
Yes.
This holiday sounds pretty crappy.
Oh, man. Well, it might be good somewhere else, but everything sucks
In
in
Tarbean,
Tarbean.
yeah.
You get to run through the streets in a mask and have a guy with a hammer chase you and possibly brain you.
I mean, it seems like a holiday that works out okay for wealthy people.
Well, yeah. The thing
Just
about
like
wealthy people
Halloween.
is everything turns out okay for wealthy people. Do you know they have better jails than they have for poor people?
Yeah, I do.
Do you know they
fucking
get cool
crazy.
shit for Christmas?
What? I was shouting and not paying attention to you.
Please continue.
Sorry, go on.
Kvothe goes to Hillside for the Midwinter Solstice Halloween Easter Festival, which is like Fat Tuesday with Victorian vibes and demon masks. Of course, it's a terrible plan for Kvothe to go to Hillside at all, let alone on Telu 10,000 Demon Christmas. And your gut sinks kind of the second you hear about it. So he gets bludgeoned and kicked mercilessly until his guts or ribs tear or something.
I would like to point out, in all of the beatings and concussions and merciless pain he's been through, I believe that this is the worst.
Oh, yeah, the cop gets him worse than anybody else.
Yeah.
He's, as they all are, a bastard.
I would like to point out, bad plan Kvothe.
Oh, he's 12. Give him a break.
Yeah, don't go to Hillside, buddy.
All he wanted was a couple of, real copper jots.
That's all you ever want. But then he gets saved. Gets a silver coin and some gloves from his saviors in demon masks.
What does he say? Amateur demons. Because the Rue would professionally play demons correctly. And
This
demons...
was hardly Encanus. Just because you wear the Encanus mask doesn't mean you're being Encanus.
I just really like the concept of amateur demons.
And we don't even know who Encanus is yet.
Yet.
So he gets saved by a guy wearing an Encanus costume and slowly makes his way home to Waterside and the Laughing Man Inn, which is the first place he recognizes when he gets back. They give him a blanket and some food, but he sees familial warmth and receives kindness there. So Kvothe gotta run away.
Ooh, kind of scary.
What is the
Bad
line?
and hurts.
Half kidding.
Oh, it's not even, it's just so straightforward with like so much of his language. That was another lesson I had learned perhaps too well. People meant pain.
Aw. He is a rock. He is an island.
Chapter 23, The Burning Wheel. Kvothe wakes in pain and stays put for once. He eats the rest of the food, he snuggles under his new blanket, and he eats some tarry-tasting roof snow when he's thirsty.
Chow down on roof snow.
Yeah, but then he's too sick and injured to stay there, so somehow he goes to Trappus's basement. Trappus and Tanny help Kvothe mend, but maybe Kvothe would have mended anyway, because maybe Kvothe is just a magic boy.
No, I think it's probably a good idea to be out of the cold when you're delusional with fever.
Sure, I've had something tear off my ribs before, and that was like 9 months of pain and limited mobility.
Yeah, I think I'm led to believe in this that he would have died because Trappus gets some actual medicine because his fever won't come down. He had enough internalized damage that he wouldn't have survived without intervention.
Needed some sort of sulfa drugs.
Yeah.
Sulfa drugs. When we don't have antibiotics left, they're all we have left. So something I noticed in this interaction and in Trappus's basement in general is that Tanny has an undetermined mental illness, which is very gently and lovingly dealt with, which is refreshing for fantasy in general, but like is really something you don't see a lot of in media. Although you see that quite a bit in the real world.
What?
What? Is that it?
Hush, hush.
Hush, hush.
What?
What?
Story time.
Hush, hush.
Trappist tells us a long, long time ago, things also sucked. But there were demons, so bad, double plus bad.
You know, I never thought about it from the beginning of that. Like, you're talking to the most beaten down version of Quoth that we have yet to see in 2 books, talking about how, a couple thousand years ago, stuff was real bad.
Yeah, it
Ooh,
was
nasty.
this then. But like on top of being homeless, there were demons. But there was also Lord Telu. Ah!
He'll save every one of us.
And Pariah. I was going to do that, and then I just decided right here not to do that. And I'm so glad I did.
I'm sort of disappointed in both of you, but we can keep moving forward.
It's never a wrong time for Flash Gordon theme song by Queen.
So, we're in this story. We got Lord Telu. We got Pariah, who is pure of heart. And Telu gets in an argument with her about the inherent nature of man, so he makes her pregnant with his finger. Bad.
I mean,
problematic deep.
This is probably the point to mention that this is not thinly veiled, a very interesting take on the sort of Jesus Christianity mythos.
I would say on the unitary myth of the self-incarnated God, the child of a virgin God, because there's a
bunch of them.
There's a
right.
bunch of
It's
them.
just the ones that we're most familiar with in this day and age.
Yeah.
It's sort of an myth of people that God gives birth to himself sometime and uses a lady for it.
Well, he doesn't give birth to himself. He impregnates her with his finger, and she gives birth to Menda 3 months later, which is like anime trouble bad. And I'm sorry I found out earlier that you don't know anime tropes, Beth, because accelerated childhood, that is anime trouble.
Is
bad.
it really?
It sure is.
It's so funny. I haven't run into accelerated childhood except a bunch in this book. Someone quickly becoming a powerful adult, right? Like that's what you're saying in anime happens?
It's also in Idols of the King.
I think it's a piece of folklore, too. I think you'll find it in Grimm's. I think it's a part of the Changeling legend in a lot of places.
There was also that superhero movie and Big. What's the superhero movie that was basically Big? Kazam?
Oh,
Shazam. Boy, was that an evening.
Was it?
Yeah.
I remember no points of it.
Yeah, but we were there together, all 3 of us. Because we're friends, listeners. We're not just podcasters. But we are podcasters, and we would appreciate it if you go to patreon.com/funkillerpod, because podcasting takes like all the time in the world, and we need just a tiny little bit of money from you to cover our expenses.
Just
if
because
you'd be
this
so
sounds
kind.
fun doesn't mean that it is.
Yeah, we're not poor like Kvoth is poor, but we're like Bay Area poor, which is pretty fucking hard.
It's getting harder.
So
Sorry.
Pariah gives birth to Menda 3 months after Telu finger poked her. And then 2 months after that, Menda is like a full-grown dude, and the townspeople are getting suspicious. And like townspeople do, they go all townspeople on Pariah and Menda.
Hey, Pariah! You bring that Menda right out here right now!
And Menda goes all Telu on the townsfolk because he was Menda the whole time.
Holy shit! Menda's Telu! What the fuck?
And then we learn their version of...
Wait, then we learn that Rex is really pretty funny when he gets high and we talk about books.
You know this. This is why we do this.
Look, I've only got so much attention to give to anyone at a time. Who can remember things while I am also reading off my laptop. Telu proves he's not a demon in a Doubting Thomas sequence, which culminates in Telu renaming all of his followers while literally reforging them with an iron hammer. The folks who don't follow Telu also get a good hammering, but one is a demon. He gets his name said and is snapped in half. Which is how you deal with demons, I guess. It's really too bad that the Skrael aren't demons.
Because he is reminiscent of the place of Jesus in our culture, I think it's really interesting. So Jesus died for our sins. Telu is like, yeah, you're all fucking sinners. I'm going to hit you with this fucking hammer.
So he goes on a 7-year rampage, offering violent salvation to the whole world at the end of an iron hammer.
Yeah. So this is, Rex, how did you describe it?
Oh,
The best, I believe.
Telu is like a very nihilistic savior god. He's like, so punishment is inevitable. Life is pain. And you're going to die. But come over here and hang out with me. Punishment right now. A little bit less pain. You're going to die.
You've never been in a pillar of white fire before.
I like Telu. I think Telu is much more the Jesus that we have than that fruity hippie who said that we should love each other and forgave
right.
us of our sins.
Telu is the Jesus death cult with its heart lay bare.
Yeah.
It's modern death cult Christianity, but like straight up.
So on Telu's 7-year rampage, he also kills all the demons he finds, except for face-shrouded Canis, on whom he shatters his hammer. And Canis goes on to destroy 6 cities in 7 days, which has got to be some sort of a record. And also, I noticed that 7 is a lucky number. So, told you so, told you so. Telu catches Canis and binds him to an iron wheel. They party for 11 days, throw Canis in a pit, and make an awful demon barbecue that I expect smells like delicious pulled pork, kind of marinated in piss.
Hey, that's our savior, man.
And that's what we're doing after this. Firing up the queue. Telu and Canis wrestle in the fire, and they both die. The end. I hope you liked your story.
So what you're telling me is that Telu invented Burning Man?
No.
Party for 11 days, light a guy on fire? Come on.
What I noticed is that the followers of Telu were given the opportunity to have 3 chances to follow him, and he asked them 3 times. So that might be where the cultural norm of you fucking listen to this, I tell you 3 times.
Oh, yeah. Well, don't worry. That 3 times thing is going to go way back.
Yeah, wait until we do the numerology episode.
Ooh, it's going to be so good. We're going to do all our names. You'll never guess what Beth adds up to.
5. B-E-T-H-E. 5. Chapter 24, Shadows Themselves.
He thinks your name is Bethy.
Quoth, still homeless, still learning. He begs, he pickpockets, he lockpicks, he gets all leather-footed. He listens to an 8-year-old boy get beaten and robbed and who knows what else in the alleyway below his hiding place.
Yay.
Chapter 24, ladies and gentlemen. The last chapter was long. This chapter, like, you can boil it down.
This chapter is legit 2 pages. You open this chapter, you turn the page, you're done.
Oh, it really energizes you for doing the rest of the work summarizing the section that you're podcasting about tomorrow. Chapter 25. Interlude. Eager for reasons. Back at the Waystone Inn, Kvothe and Chronicler discuss Kvothe's rich history of beatings, broken bones, and concussions. Kvothe still regrets not helping that boy in the alley. And Bast has a question that we all have, which is why Kvothe didn't go to Ben after his parents died.
That was so what I was rooting for the first time I read through. I'm just like, go to fucking Ben. You know, he's got that.
You're going to be a brewery boy.
Yeah, that hot brewer wife. He's doing great.
Look, if the hero goes back to Ben after the dead parents, then
it's not the monomyth.
Then he's setting Ben up to get sliced in half by Darth Vader later, and that's just mean. Kvothe knows better.
I'm talking from the emotional place of talking about a 12-year-old boy whose entire family was killed. I remember that from my first read through. This time I'm a bit more clinical about it, but that time I was just like, go back to Ben. Stop it.
It's also easy to just like completely ignore the just couple of paragraphs between leaving Ben and the death of his parents, where he talks about all the time that has passed between the last time he saw Ben and that moment. Like they've gone a long way.
He goes on to explain why not.
Yeah. Because he's
we
far
know
away.
that is what everyone in the audience is wanting him to do.
Oh, and it's hard for a child to travel hundreds of miles through the woods by yourself in the fantasy world long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Kvothe stays in Tarbine for so long because his hardship and torture become kind of routinized. Until he finds a reason to leave because of his and Chronicler's mutual friend, Scarpy.
Scarpy!
And what I noticed is Scarpy.
Can I tell you guys this? When I first moved to San Francisco, there was a dollar store right by my house. And at that dollar store, you could buy for $1 24 Scarpies. They're not Sharpies. They're Scarpies. So every time they bring up Scarpy, what I think of is, good 24 pack of Scarpies.
Wow.
That's incredible.
That's how cheap plastic either is or used to
Oh,
be.
they were less than 1 use a piece.
Scarpy! Chapter 26, Lanray Turned. It's Kvothe's third year in Tarbine, and he hears about a storyteller who will give you 1 whole silver talent if you ask him for a story he doesn't know. And as we know, 1 silver talent is all the goddamn money in the world.
Yeah,
It is
at this point we know that.
So much fucking money.
Yeah. Problem is, this guy tells stories down in Dockside, which is Pike's territory. You'll remember he's the kid who threw Kvothe on top of his father's loot and broke it. And then we find out that Kvothe has the opportunity to get some revenge on Pike, returns to like wherever Pike stays, finds his most precious shit, burns that, but he basks in it long enough for Pike to find him and beat the shit out of him and stab him and break some of his ribs.
Concussion 4.
So Kvothe douses him in accelerant and sets him on fire. So that's
Classy.
Yeah, that's your setup and stakes for him going to Dockside to listen to the storyteller. But Kvothe wants to go to the storyteller so he can ask him about the story that his father was working on for his father's song. Kvothe goes to story time and asks Scarpy to tell the story of Lanray. So now, Scarpy, story times. The city of Mir Taranel is a shining Tarbine on a hill. It's one of 8 cities, and it's the only nice one. There's a creation war running amok, and Mir Taranel is only unaffected because of their wise Solomon of a ruler, Celatos.
Celatos is a fucking baller.
Also, he has magic seeing power, so that helps. But all the cities put their trust in Lanray instead, who is like the Arthurian-style warrior king, who just is super good at killing everyone, like a lot. He's in love with this lady, Lyra. Lyra?
I was thinking Lyra.
Yeah, that's what I think it is.
His lady love is Lyra, who knows the names of things and how to use them.
Doesn't really matter. She's about to die.
When Lanray dies saving everyone, actually, Lyra breathes, calls, and weeps his name, and brings him back from the dead.
That stupid part really got me. I was quite stoned when I was reading it, but it totally made me cry.
Yeah, never pet cemetery someone, like not once, not ever.
It was a really effective use of repetition and change really sold it as a piece of storytelling. It's exactly what you'd hear
Oh, yeah.
in a legend.
So Lanray is back from the dead, and he
Hello.
seems to be fine. And he smites almost all of the enemies. But like people hear that Lyra may be ill or something. Anyway, Lanray comes to hang out with Celatos and is like, I'm going to bind you instead. Stay here on this hilltop and watch me ransack and completely fuck up your city. Basically, because Lanray's a piece of shit now. Because, like, he learned all this magic to bring his wife back, and that didn't turn out well, so fuck it all. It's really childish and kind of off-putting.
If I can't be dead and she's going to be dead, everybody else is going to be dead because that's the way it is.
And now Lanray is Haliax because when you're that much of a dick, you need a new name, buddy. Celatos curses him 3 ways because everything is done 3 ways. And one of them is you have a foghead, and the other 2...
Love Foghead.
And the other 2 are basically you suck and everyone who follows you sucks. The end.
It's so much. Can we take a moment? The stories that are within chapters are the dominant thing in that chapter. They're a story within a story within a story. And we are, at least at this point, led to believe that these are important, very important pieces of information about the world that we live in.
Whether they're a complete waste of our time.
Whether they are true or not. So I just wanted to mention that the titles of these chapters have to do with the story within them, not with the overarching context of where Quoth is in those chapters. So in the story that we heard from Trappist is called The Burning Wheel, which is the thing that
Lanray straps and Canis to.
In Canis.
Taylu straps and Canis to.
Yeah, it's like the cross kind of their culture, but it's both where Taylu dies in self-sacrifice and where the final last demon is removed from this earth. And then in the second story, it's called Lanray Turned, which is what D-Day just described, and that's the title chapter. And then we'll talk about the Exile chapter when we get to the third story in here.
But I also want to mention that the some of the following chapters are named in reference to the content of the stories.
His eyes unveiled.
His eyes unveiled.
Yeah. I think it's funny because we don't hear another story for a while after these ones, and these ones are presented so early in the book that I certainly overlooked them the first time going through. But these stories are an incredible revelation about the world that we are in.
Please continue.
Yeah, sorry. Go on.
When Scarpy is done telling his story, Quoth comes up to the stage, basically, and is like, hey, Scarpy, tell me things about stories, like how they're all one story, and that even though Lanray's story really happened, it's not really true because that's not really what stories are.
Do you guys get Werner Herzog off of this? I feel like it's such the existential truth, the way that Scarpy talks about stories, and the way
ecstatic truth.
The ecstatic truth. The
Yeah, you have to be a good liar to tell a good story.
Exactly, like you can't tell them the whole truth or it sounds this way or that way. You've got to do this, but the story, yes, it happened. I love the ecstatic truth. I think that that's what this is nodding to. The idea that an articulated, created story is sometimes more fundamentally important.
It's the acknowledgement of the fact that no story can be fundamentally true.
Right.
Any retelling of a story is interpreted by the teller, and so the truly thoughtful storyteller reinforces that which is true within the story through artifice.
Exactly. That once there is a storyteller, we're not talking about the truth anymore. It has a point of view.
We're not talking about the unmediated truth.
Right.
The objective, measurable truth.
We're talking about a different kind of truth.
Ain't that
Sometimes
so
I get the feeling that, like, when Kvothe was a kid, Kvothe grew up in, like, a middle-class suburban household in Tarbine and just spun this whole story about being a Demaru and, like, losing his family and everything and having this tragic beginning when, like, really he got a scholarship to the university, you know, because he's really good and smart and everything, but he also had a leg up.
I mean, I feel like you're probably talking about Patrick Rothfuss, right?
No, I want to
the
meet
story-
No,
Patrick
I think he's
Rothfuss
actually
and have
talking
him
about
like me.
Dave Eggers.
Chapter 27. His eyes unveiled. Kvothe leaves story time happy, but there is something in Scarpy's story that gives him a sense of disquiet, and he can't figure out what it is. But the next day is Dead Telu Christmas, the day the day that homeless orphans see Talon priests that remind them of Haliax the Hooded. Kvothe remembers his compartmentalized memories, runs to his hiding place, and decides to tell Scarpy what he knows about his experience with Haliax and the Chandrian. He stays awake all night and falls asleep at dawn. Chapter 28, Telu's Watchful Eye. It's Scarpy's story time! It's Scarpy's story time!
Oh, I love Scarpy's story time.
Kvothe wakes up late and runs over to Dockside, getting to Scarpy mid-story.
Can I say that this is the first thing he's looked forward to in like chapters and chapters and chapters? Like
Since his strings broke.
it's so dreary. Our dear listeners, our dear friends, rereading these parts, it's very hard, and it's so nice to see him, be excited about a thing again. It reminds me of the like literal feeling of coming a step out of depression. I'm actually looking forward to something? That's weird.
Feels like it's been a minute.
So he shows up late. The story is about Celatos, and Celatos is talking to, like, the god, Aleph. The god of the Jews, it seems. Celatos still needs help beating Haliax.
We got a Yahweh here.
Yeah, we got a Yahweh right here. And Celatos needs his help to defeat Haliax, who is still the effing worst. Telu is there, and Celatos has people there, and Telu and a bunch of his people who decide that they can be impartial and become angels are become angels by Aleph. And we find out that Celitos. We find out that I'm calling him Celitos from now on. That's pretty badass. We all agreed on Celitos?
Celitos.
Okay, so Celitos and the plainsfolk that he brought, or whatever group of people that he brought who we don't know who they are.
They're called Ruach.
The Ruach become the
Well, we
Amir.
don't know what they are.
And they're like, no, man, we really super duper need to stop Haliax and the Chandrian.
That is so complicated, and it's just this little like 4-bit before he gets captured, right?
Yeah.
It's just so complicated.
It's really complicated, and like the angels that Aleph makes kind of sound like the Chandrian, or
Right, because there's 7 of them, because
there's
everything's
9
3s or
of them.
7s. Is there 9?
These are 9 for some reason.
Guys, I'm not good at all this detail shit.
There's all these numbers,
and
there's no math.
And they're not spoken of in number, but they're a
Indeed,
number
in
of them are
personality.
listed.
Yeah, I guess I just assumed there were 7.
Yeah, so Telu decides to be an angel, and this is the first we're hearing of this as the audience, but also as Kvothe. But wait, no, there's assholes here. And one of them is a super priest called a Justice and his enforcers.
Nobody expects the Talon Inquisition.
Scarpy is charged with heresy.
You were waiting so long to do that. Sorry, go on, BJ.
That's why I'm going on. Scarpy is charged with heresy, but we're impressed that he is chronicler levels of nonplussed by this whole situation. Scarpy is the fucking boss that I aspire to be, like, every day, actually. The Justice is a complete prick, and Scarpy just leans in and pisses him right the fuck off until the Justice breaks a clay cup over
You're
his
a
head.
Scarpy. That's what you are.
I have been the whole time. I am
Scarpy.
full of righteous indignation, and fuck you, how dare you.
Scarpy did not come into this bar with any fucks, and he was not going to give what he didn't have.
Yeah, like the Justice pretends to be all pious and in control of himself, and Scarpy just continues to piss him off until he gets beaten near senseless, but not before giving Kvothe some very good run and stay away from these creepy priests advice, which, if you think about it, is always good advice. And for once, Kvothe takes it.
Listen to your Scarpy, kids.
What I noticed is priests, man.
Oh.
Yeah, the Church of Telu is not looking good in this story.
Oh, yeah. I was so pissed off because I didn't know how much I liked Scarpy until that moment. And then I
You
was like,
think you're
"Fuck,
going to
I
get
really-"
another mentor.
Yeah.
Nope.
Well, not even. He's just neat.
He sure is.
He is like Avatar level storyteller. He is the pure projection of Patty Rot into into this story space. Author Avatar.
Chapter 29, The Doors of My Mind.
I would like to point out it's the first time we've heard "my" a possessive in any of the titles.
You can point that out. Kvothe runs back to his hiding place. He's sad to lose another ray of hope in Scarpy. This makes him think of everything he's lost, which he realizes isn't quite so painful anymore. And for the first time, he uses Heart of Stone, and he sleeps still and deep for the first time in forever. He wakes, looks at his belongings, and knows they're not going to be enough to get him to university. But he's going to university, guys.
It's such a great moment of relief. Like, he's been moving towards it, figuring out how to be back in touch with himself at all or in any way. And it takes a story and also a fucking bludgeoning, because, yeah.
Because it always takes a bludgeoning.
To remind him that he has motivation in the world and
Motivation and fucking magic ninja powers.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, oh wait, I could do this the whole time. I know kung fu.
right, I'm magic. I should get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
The fuck have I been doing? Spanging for 3 years.
But I think that this is a very interesting point. Early in this book, when we're talking about magic, we talk about the theory of mind behind magic, that you can split yourself off from yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we hear about Abenthi asking him to play games where he's hiding, one half of his brain is hiding something from the other half of his brain. It's also very much used to help you understand his trauma. So both,
right, so he was playing hide the ball with his trauma.
Yeah, he
hit
off.
it so well.
Yeah.
That it healed over while he forgot to look for it.
Yeah, I really like the theory of mind that is displayed in sort of his reawakening, because it is in phases. It isn't just at one moment. You see him come to several realizations of humanity and reconnection with his past. The first time after he hears Scarpy's story and he can actually think of his parents without the excruciating pain that makes him avoid it. I just think it's incredibly clever, because the theory of magic about your ability to separate parts of yourself from yourself in order to achieve these things is a really valid theory of trauma. You know, how we handle the horrible, inconceivable things, especially in childhood.
Like watching your parents get slaughtered by monsters
Telu will
from
help us
another
through.
realm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating that both magic and recovering from trauma live in the same realm in this world. both separate from yourself and recombine with yourself. And damn it, I don't quite know how to finish that thought. Sure, it's fine. It's fine. It was smart.
You got the bulk of it out.
I got the bulk of it out.
Chapter 30, The Broken Binding. Kvothe goes to a bookstore and sells Rhetoric and Logic with an option to buy it back. The bookseller tries to give him a cheaty receipt, and Kvothe shows him who's a smarty pants and cheats him right back.
Who's literate?
You weren't expecting me to read and write. Now I got one over on you, didn't I? Huh?
Yeah, and the bookseller is such a dick, he has Kvothe write his own receipt in which Kvothe says that he'll buy the book back for pennies instead of the jots or the talents that he gets it for.
He gets 3 talents, right? It's a lot of money.
2 or 3 talents, something.
I think it's 2.
Too much detail.
Certainly
Didn't put
3.
it in.
We're gonna get 3.
We'll get to that point.
We'll get
all that
3
shit.
like 3 chapters from now.
Kvothe steals some pens and ink on the way out because he's tricksy, and the guy gives Kvothe an extra copper because he's not a total asshole. He's a kind of partial asshole.
He's the kind of total asshole that makes you think he's not a total asshole while he's stealing your pens and ink.
Chapter 31, The Nature of Nobility. Kvothe has some real money now. So he buys a purse and some food,
Clinking together money.
having to break it down into smaller bits of money. And that's what a purse is for. And he has money, but he doesn't have, a lot of money. So he trades work for a bath.
Pretty sure it was 3. You're the one talking about rhyming narratives. He gets 3 for the book, and that's all his money in the world. And then he's
Here comes the book.
Sorry, go. Yeah, it's totally 3.
No. Rex should figure out things that are 3, and I'm going to get another beer.
It's The Broken Binding, Chapter 30.
2 talents, and I have the option to buy it back for a month.
Damn it.
Chapter 31, The Nature of Nobility. Kvothe has real money now. He buys a purse and some food and trades work for a bath because even though he has money, he is frugal. And it's important to be frugal as a means of helping you get past your trauma. So now he's clean, and he can't put on his old filthy bags. So he sneaks out of the inn in nothing but a towel, head held high,
A naked boy.
and acts like a complete prick until he's able to look like one too. He acts like a rich guy, because when you act like a certain level of privilege, people sometimes bow to it.
I believe the text calls it that young lord is a natural disaster. Like,
He goes full Karen.
yeah, he
Oh,
does.
Unchecked Karen.
100% Brad.
He walks into the tailor shop and goes right to the manager. Doesn't even ask.
Oh,
He
it's
can smell the manager.
It's such a relief in this narrative. It's like, oh yeah, it's fun again. It's
Yeah,
fun.
he reclaims himself.
Yeah.
Because he is acting, and acting is the best.
Genius.
If you can't act, get yourself some acting. Recommend the shit out of it. The reason this works is that much like now, the children of the rich are just real pieces of shit.
Always.
Kvothe goes back to the inn to do the dishes he promised to do, and the innkeeper is like, nah, it's all right, man. You look like a person now. You don't have to do dishes. In fact, keep your money and go get some kindness instead. And Kvothe likes the inn. Why? Someday Kvothe might like inns professionally. That's my prediction.
I mean, he literally says it, but go on.
Oilers?
Chapter 32, Coppers, Cobblers, and Crowds. Kvothe is on his way to Hillside to get the hell out of Dodge Tarbine, but he is uncomfortable because he's not used to being considered a person by the people around him.
Yeah, it's weird not to be, like, spat upon and avoided and occasionally kicked.
The story of poverty in this and in real life is just awful. So Kvothe is a part of a crowd, and he looks like a part of a crowd now, except he forgot that when you're a part of a crowd, usually you wear shoes. And he forgot to get shoes because his feet have been his shoes for so long.
He's basically a hobbit now.
Yeah.
Or a hippie.
So he goes to buy shoes, and the cobbler's son's shoes are free because the cobbler don't sell old shoes. And we think that the cobbler is a tinker because he's singing the tinker song, or he's a nice dude who sings songs about tinkers. Kvothe finds a wagon that will probably get him to the university before the end of the enrollment season. Kvothe spends his last hours in Tarbeen saying goodbye to Trappist and the basement, and the urchins don't recognize him because Kvothe doesn't belong there anymore. But Travis recognizes him.
Travis?
Trappist recognizes him, and that gives Kvothe all the feels. Chapter 33, A Sea of Stars. It's the sky! Kvothe is ready for travel with a cloak. And as someone who covers himself in pockets, both for fashion and utility, I really appreciate Kvothe's appreciation of his cloak. And over again through this story, I will be ever increasingly jealous of the awesome cloaks that Kvothe has.
Don't worry, they would actually murder you in real life. They're nice fantasy wear. Cloaks are not reasonable.
Listeners, you might think that D-Day is just selling a thing here, but let me tell you, I have a jacket he made for me that has no less than 4 stacked pockets. It has a main pocket on which he's sewn a pocket on which he's sewn another pocket, and he made a pocket in the sewing of the one pocket onto the other.
Well, as soon as those cloaks have rivets in them, we'll be at D-Day.
I think this world is advanced enough for riveting.
For rivets? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they make lamps.
This is a riveting culture.
Lamps are post-rivet.
Yeah, that...
Kvothe is off to Wizard University and out of Tarbeen without the other shoe dropping. So that's a surprise.
What's the other shoe dropping?
Just the expectation that there's going to be some stumbling block before he can get out of Tarbeen. Everything has been going pretty smooth this whole time. And even though I know the narrative, I'm just like, what is it? Like, when does it happen? What do you lose?
Oh, you mean they stopped kicking the shit out of them for a second, and you're like, when is it coming back?
He's
Yes,
got nothing
that.
left to lose.
No, and now
Except
he
his
meets Denna and
nice
has
cloak,
something to win.
full of pockets.
Denna seems nice.
Ah, Denna's a charming highway girl.
She is, and Kvothe quickly becomes friends with the highway girl. And one night they hang out in front of a waystone and on top of another waystone and stay up and talk all night and bond.
As you do on waystones.
Yeah.
By waystones.
And, like, it really seems that Kvothe and Dee like being on the waystone. Chapter 34.
Is that a euphemism for something?
No.
No, because they're children.
Yeah, they're children.
Oh,
and
right. Gross.
I guess now he's 15 and he says that he thinks she's maybe a year or two older than him. She could be 16,
and you
17.
can't, like, be in limerence when you're 15 or 16. So moving on.
No, that can't happen at all. Limerence is unachievable at such a young age.
Chapter 34, Yet to Learn. Kvothe wakes tired to find their party has taken on another member, Jocelyn.
Jocelyn.
Jocelyn flirts with Dee, and he has a goddamned lute that Kvothe wants to effing play.
Like straight pulls out the lute at the party, sits on the couch in the middle of the room playing.
Does a bunch of covers. And then Kvothe asks for and receives the lute. And as somebody who wants to play better than the person who is currently playing acoustic guitar in a room, like, I've had the interaction where the guy's been like, be really careful with it. Just like, it's a guitar.
No, that's such a great moment, and it's such a musician moment. I work helping professional musicians mic up. You don't fucking touch their instruments. You have to ask
first. Yeah.
You have to ask very specifically, and they might say no.
Yeah, and that has to be fine.
I will move this myself. You don't ever fucking touch their instruments without their permission. It would be incredibly rude at a professional venue.
Except at Burning Man. At Burning Man, if you ask somebody to use their instrument and they're just like, no, this is really good. It's not good. You brought your guitar to Burning Man. let me play your guitar. I don't care if it was $800. That is a $50 guitar now. Give it. Chapter 34. Yet to learn. Kvothe wakes tired to find their party has taken on another member. He is Jocelyn, and he flirts with Dee, and he has a goddamn
call her
flute.
Denna for a while because we don't have that as the shorthand for her for a while.
He is Jocelyn, and he flirts with Denna, and he has a goddamn lute that Kvothe wants to play. He asks for and receives the lute, and then he just shreds a melody of sadness and heartache. And when he's done, everyone is silent, and Denna starts crying. Jocelyn cannot play the lute like Kvothe can play the lute because Kvothe is the best.
Nobody can play the lute like Kvothe can play the lute. Like they're on some like green sleeves shit, and he's coming out with Hendrix. Like this is a different animal entirely.
Yeah, and afterward he goes off and he has himself another lonely, silent cry. And then we hear that there is even greater sorrow to come, which can't be good. We just got out of Tarbean.
Can I focus on that
Yes.
moment for a second? Because it's a shift in perspective. Most of the time when Kvothe is telling his own story, he is fairly in the realm of his younger self.
He doesn't usually reference ahead or behind much.
Yeah, and he'll just tell you the story as young Kvothe is seeing it. But it is a switch that I don't believe we've seen as thoroughly as we see in this chapter, where Kvothe takes the mantle of storytelling back out to that narrative.
Where he's editorializing on
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah.
We get we tend to get that at the openings of chapters after interludes.
Mm-hmm. I would say we tend to get that at super emotional points.
Yeah, that too.
Kvothe tends to summarize emotion instead of allowing, like, he's not going to give you the blow by blow the way he does about the important bits of the narrative. He summarizes the emotional stuff, which I think ends up being a very haunting and sad because he's telling the story of his young self. And he's like, hey, let's give my young self in their sadness some space. Because he doesn't necessarily want to be seen in this way.
Chapter 35, A Parting of Ways. Really straightforward title for once, guys. Kvothe gets a
What
copper
could it be in reference to?
Kvothe gets a copper jot and some friendliness from the caravan before he goes and doesn't run away from the kindness.
Aww.
But he is prideful and foolish, like a boy is, and he doesn't really spend the last bit of time and the opportunity he has to spend time with Denna before he leaves because Jocelyn is afoot. But Denna finds him before he heads out and tells him to find her if things don't work out at Wiz Uni. And otherwise, she says she'll find him. And poof, like a Chandrian, she is gone.
Whoa, geez.
Not like a Chandrian. Figuratively, like a Chandrian.
How many times have we said that this episode? We got to watch ourselves.
Chapter 36, Less Talents. Kvothe.
Fewer. Sorry. Please continue.
This is awful.
Chapter 36, Less Talents. Kvothe sleeps in a field, washes in a stream, and is off to university. A university that has great stone doors.
Oh, they're so good.
The doors of stone doors. Or other stone doors. Coming in a couple months from whatever press puts out
I
Patrick
forget that's the
Rothfuss's
title
book.
of the third book.
Yeah. But boom, stone doors at the university. Wonder if that means anything. Kvothe wants into the archives immediately so he can learn about the Amir and the Chandrian somewhere in their 10 times 10,000 books. So he goes to the archives, but they don't let him in because he is not a person who is allowed into the archives. He's just a guy.
Fair, valid point.
Yeah.
Fuck off, kid.
Yep. And that guy tells him that admissions are almost over, so like get to admissions. So Kvothe does. He goes to the Hollows where the admissions are taking place. Weird choice of name for admissions to happen.
All of the buildings have super meaningful names, especially if you've read book 2.5, the one that's all about that mysterious young crazy
Gear.
that mysterious gear.
Kvothe goes to the admissions situation, which is like he seems to be on some sort of a thrust stage, and in front of him is a chef's table of Arcanist masters. Anyone who has watched Top Chef or basically any reality-based TV like game show of skilled people or cooking or whatnot will recognize like the dais of judges in front of Kvothe
I love
right
that he's
now.
explaining a judge's array, but he just assumes everybody knows what thrust stage is.
It's so funny to me because the visual picture that I have of being on the horns, of being at that table with all of the headmasters, is so vivid and incorrect to what you're describing.
Cool.
But you're right, it is a thrust stage. But you're not out on the thrust. You're over on the part of the thing. Doesn't matter. We don't need to talk about my visual images
We
from the
are,
book.
though.
Sorry.
Clearly, the master's table is elevated approximately 16 feet straight up, and you are on a small circular platform being stared down upon.
And they grill Kvothe about his bona fides, and he doesn't have them because he sold Ben's book. But we find out there are asshole masters and kind masters, which gives us a little bit of a Snape and McGonagall and Dumbledore vibe, especially from Masters Heme and Lauren and the Chancellor. Other fantasy.
I feel like sad to mention Harry Potter in that way right there. But just
I mean,
because
I think it's important to mention Harry Potter.
we're
Harry Potter
gonna
is
be
seminal.
Harry Pottering.
And also trans people are people, and some people who write Harry Potter can go fuck themselves.
And get fucked while doing so.
The masters ask Kvothe questions in what we assume are their different specialties before we find out their different specialties. And Kvothe is, of course, the whiz we already know he is. But we find out Kvothe is as tricksy as he is smart, and he tells us that he snuck in to listen to a bunch of interviews long before he went in for his own time in front of the masters. I like that Kvothe is at an audition and he has refused to do the cold read. And he's like, no. I'm finding out what this script is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is too important for me to walk in and not know who my character
that
is.
is such a good way of putting it, that he's refusing to do the cold read. He's like, no, I want to know who I'm talking to and what the stakes are before I go into this
If
goddamn
he
thing.
has to do a cold read, he's going to do one of the best cold reads. But if he can help it, he's not doing a cold read. So he kills it at most of the questions up until we get to magic engineering, which is the first time we really hear that it's not like based in sympathetic magic, which is the only real magic rule set we know yet. He also stumbles with one of Master Hemi's questions, and then Master Namer asks to ask a question, and everyone's like, Chief Justice Clarence Thomas just asked a question.
Thank God he's not Chief Justice.
Yeah. Master Namer seems to be some sort of like savant or weirdo. Kvothe ends up being accepted to university with the Master Artificer as his sponsor. But Kvothe can't afford the 3 talents that he thinks he has to pay for tuition. After being pissy at Master Lauren when the archivist recognizes Kvothe's pops as Arl the Bard,
Arl!
Kvothe realizes he's actually getting a 3 talent per semester scholarship from the university.
Well, for this one semester.
For this one semester. Kvothe is so good at being somebody who has education and wants more education that he literally is a part of inventing scholarships in this world.
Goddamn right, you're going to pay me
Like,
to
they
teach
don't
me.
have a word for what they gave him.
DJ, you're so right. It's like the very first scholarship that they have ever given out.
He's the first, like, absolute fucking genius that is there. And, like, look, Hemi doesn't want him there because Hemi's a prick. The Master Artificer wants to be his sponsor, not because Kvothe is able to answer his question, but because Kvothe is asked an impossible engineering question and immediately dives into parsing how you solve it. That is the sort of student and the sort of scholar.
What does he say?
That Kvothe is.
You got the quote?
I don't have the Kvothe, but I can find the Kvothe.
The quote
The
where...
Kvothe quote?
The quote that
Kvothe?
the Master Artificer says about him during the thing, he's like, if half of our students were as blah, 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 as blah, blah, blah.
Oh, yeah, I'd have to teach with, like, a whip and a chair.
Yes, I'd have to teach with a whip and a chair. And, like, this is such a great scene.
Oh, and the shit that that Kvothe doesn't know, that Master Hemi asks him about, like, the rhetoric and logic stuff. The only reason why Kvothe doesn't know the last thing in a list of things he's supposed to know is because he and Ben had a pet name for it.
Right, he knows what it is, but he doesn't know the official name of it.
Right. And when he's challenged on that, he's like, well, I'm here because I know I don't know everything. Yeah, so Kvothe gets into Magic University, and he finds out he's getting a scholarship. And I believe for the first time in this entire story, Kvothe not only weeps, but he weeps in front of somebody. And the somebody he weeps in front of is quite possibly the most stoic character that we meet in this story or any other.
He weeps numerous times, just not in front of people. I just want to point out he weeps as a child after his parents die. He weeps after the pain of recounting that story, not in front of them. And that's the sweet moment in the text where even though no one is looking, he pulls his hand to cover his eyes while he cries. Because it's not...
Kvothe is tough, man.
I mean... I actually really appreciate a character that has so much male crying.
Mm-hmm.
And a bit of decorum around it.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't want to admit his vulnerability, but he can have feelings.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard when you've been a tortured child your whole life.
I have nothing left to read. I do have more to read, but apparently that's for next time.
And
That's
that's
for
the
next
end
time.
of
Chapter
D-Day's bit.
37, Bright-Eyed, for next time. You know what? I'll give everyone a sample.
No,
Lauren
we're good. We're
takes
good. We
Kvothe
can
to-
do this next time.
Old iron, clean fire, and the holy name of God. Do you want to know the name of the wind? Gather round and listen. You'll get your answers by the end. By the end, King Killer, King Killer, King Killer, King Killer.